Okay, this is my 7-minute persuasive speech, and background noise is children that I babysit. Shortly before he was executed, after more than a decade of denying any part in any crimes, Ted Bundy confessed to 30 homicides in a 4-year span across 7 different states. The real victim count is unknown, but is expected to be much higher than that. Bundy received 3 death sentences for 2 separate trials for the murders he committed in Florida alone. After being incarcerated for 11 years, he was finally sent to the electric chair. Imagine you're a family member of one of the 30 or more girls that he kidnapped, raped, and slaughtered. Would anything less than the death penalty have been sufficient for the pain he caused you and your loved ones? Capital punishment, or the death penalty, is defined as being the legally authorized killing of someone as punishment for a crime. The crimes you have to commit in order to be worthy for the death penalty include first-degree murder, capital murder, and aggravated murder. Some states allow the death penalty for kidnap or sexual assault. New Hampshire even allows the death penalty for someone who kills a police officer. As of October 1st of last year, there were 3,035 inmates on death row in the United States alone. 32 states have decided that the death penalty should be used, whereas only 18 think differently. Texas has had more executions than anywhere else in the country, topping off at an average of 21 executions per year since 2007. At that rate, by the end of this year, Texas will have executed, humanely I might add, 168 people who committed heinous, despicable crimes in the last 8 years alone, ensuring that they will never again harm anybody or their families the way they harmed their previous victims and their families. John Stuart Mill, an English philosopher, once said, "Does fining a criminal show want of respect for property or imprisoning him for personal freedom? Just as unreasonable is it to think that to take the life of a man who has taken that of another is to show want of regard for human life. We show, on the contrary, most emphatically our regard for it, by the adoption of a rule that he who violates that right in another forfeits it for himself." The death penalty provides the ultimate warning to all criminals and would-be criminals. In some cases, death is the only thing that these people fear. Giving somebody life in jail just isn't as much of a deterrent as the death penalty. I asked you earlier to imagine that you were a family member of one of the many women that Ted Bundy obliterated from this earth. Would you have accepted his sentence if he got life in prison? What if he came up for parole? The death penalty, aside from being a major deterrent, provides the ultimate closure for victims and their families. What better way to punish death than with death? An eye for an eye has long been practiced in our world, which makes the death penalty the best answer for murder. While some people believe that it's cruel, it really isn't. Every effort is made to ensure that their deaths will be quick and relatively painless. Some people think that any pain involved makes it cruel and unusual and therefore unconstitutional. But that begs the question, what about all of the pain that these people caused countless others? 60% of Americans that were surveyed said that they support the death penalty. However, those who oppose it are much more vocal about their opposition than the supporters are for their support. They argue that the death penalty doesn't teach anybody anything. They don't think that capital punishment actually dissuades anybody from committing any crimes. Another opposition point is that the death penalty is hypocritical. The people who oppose it view it as teaching a child not to hit by spanking them. But is that really the case? Kent Scheidegger, the top lawyer at the Criminal Justice Legal Foundation, has said, "What happened is the people doing studies finding deterrence have sort of given it up because they're being attacked. And the people who are ideologically driven to oppose the death penalty keep pumping out papers. While the majority of people claim to believe in the death penalty, they're not speaking up about it, whereas those who oppose can't shut up about it. Does that mean capital punishment is wrong simply because the opposition is louder than the supporters? Or does this fall into the line of thinking that the closed-minded people often come with open mouths? Maybe some changes need to be made. It is possible to meet the critics halfway by giving them some peace of mind. Capital punishment should only be admissible if it can be proved beyond 100%, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant is guilty of the crime that they are being charged with. Another worry that the opposition has is the cost of keeping inmates on death row. In order to deal with that, we should execute the death row inmates much faster than we do now, which would not only clear up space in prisons all over the country, but would also save taxpayers a lot of money. In a world where crime runs rampant, we can't allow any question as to whether victims and their families will receive retribution for the things that happened to them. We cannot give rapists and murderers the freedom to go out and commit these crimes again, as they surely will. Andrew Dawson was given a life sentence in 1982 after he killed a 91-year-old man in his home, stabbing him a dozen times with a bread knife. In 2010, he was released from prison. A few weeks after his release from prison, he stabbed 2 more men in separate attacks in their homes, leaving them dead in their bathtubs. Andrew Dawson is not the only example of this botched view of a life sentence, and he is not the only example of a released killer who has killed again. John Matthews and Paul Hancock, Dawson's victims after his release from prison, would still be alive today if he had been given the death penalty in 1982, instead of a life sentence that was somehow reduced to 28 years. Their deaths surely weigh on the shoulders of those who released Dawson in the first place. We cannot allow ourselves to be weighed down by the deaths of innocent people. We need to ensure that these people, who have proved themselves to be deadly, maybe time and time again, will never hurt anybody ever again. The death penalty is the only way that we can save lives while also providing peace of mind for people all over the country. If a dog killed someone, can you imagine how quickly it would be put down? Why should a human, who, unlike a dog, actually knows the difference between wrong and right and still chose to act wrongly, who kills another human, be treated any differently? Some people deserve to be executed for what they've done to others. Why should we show mercy to people who clearly showed no mercy towards others?